There's a ton of noise out there. So how do you get decision makers to pay attention to your brand? Start a podcast and invite your ideal clients to be guests on your show. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to B2B Growth, a daily podcast for B2B leaders. We've interviewed names you've probably heard before, like Gary Vaynerchuk and Simon Sinek, but you've probably never heard from the majority of our guests. That's because the bulk of our interviews aren't with professional speakers and authors. Most of our guests are in the trenches leading sales and marketing teams. They're implementing strategy. They're experimenting with tactics. They're building the fastest growing B2B companies in the world. My name is James Carberry. I'm the founder of Sweetfish Media, a podcast agency for B2B brands, and I'm also one of the co-hosts of this show. When we're not interviewing sales and marketing leaders, you'll hear stories from behind the scenes of our own business. We'll share the ups and downs of our journey as we attempt to take over the world. Just kidding. Well, maybe. Let's get into the show.
Welcome back to Why Podcasts Work. Today, we are joined by Chip Rodgers. Chip is the VP of Marketing at WorkSpan. He is also the host of the Alliance Aces podcast. Chip, welcome to the show.
Johnny, thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to get to interview you. I've actually known Chip for quite some time now, which is fantastic. We've gotten a chance to work together. One of the reasons that we actually wanted to bring him on Why Podcasts Work, he's had a podcast up and running for a bit now, and so he's seen it. He's seen it from start to finish. Well, certainly not finished, but certainly from start to where we are now, which is fantastic. Chip, the first question, let's just start with the basic thing here. Where have you seen the biggest benefit from your podcast?
Well, Johnny, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it. And we've just really embraced the whole podcast model and gotten a ton of benefit from a number of areas, and some, that were even a little bit surprising. We're a company that's built on working with alliance professionals and companies that are doing strategic alliances. And we felt, from the beginning that we're all alliance professionals ourselves. And we felt from the beginning that it's a profession that is a little bit underserved, and there isn't the recognition, and we wanted to elevate the whole profession. So the podcast, what we're doing is just interviewing alliance professionals. And in fact, this morning I just did an interview with, and this is a guy that's been in it for just 2.5 years. It was great to get that perspective of someone that's new to the profession but just really enjoying it and thriving. But at the same time, we've had folks on that have been, 20, 30 years as alliance professionals. And so you get this real variety of perspectives and experiences and best practices and all those things. So, we're publishing that content out both as a podcast, but then also turning it into a blog that links to the podcast. And we post everything on all of our social channels. So it's up on LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter. And it's just gotten a lot of really good interest, both, from just folks outside that are interested, that are typically alliance professionals. But, it's also just a great way of having content that's interesting and valuable, and, people react really, really well to it. So it's been great.
Absolutely. I mean, I think one of the things that you had said was also that it can be very authentic content. So, you've got this authentic content, you're building a community of like-minded thought leaders. And it's wonderful to hear all the different ways that you've been able to also repurpose the content. I mean, I know you're doing a lot on Facebook Live, so that's fantastic. You've got raw video footage. You've obviously got the slightly more polished podcast audio, turning that into blogs, social posts. So all great, compelling content. That's fantastic. Chip, are there any metrics or numbers that you can share regarding the ROI on a podcast? I know obviously in part it's a little bit early, but any specific examples that you might be able to share with us.
Yeah, so I don't know that I would try. It probably is too early to talk about specific numbers. I mean, we see it growing. We see the downloads growing. We're very happy with with that part of it. We see hits on our blog posts. But one of the things, and it was actually a little bit surprising, was not sort of our original intention, but and I think you used the right word, which is community. We build this, building this community of alliance professionals, and like you said, you have a conversation. It's just it's just sort of talking about what works and what doesn't work, and best practices and challenges, and how to be successful and things like that. And you have these just great conversations, and you really get to know each other. So we've had times when maybe there's a sales cycle going on, and somebody runs into a challenge, or they're trying to understand the organization or whatever, and we've been able to just reach out and make sort of make the connection again with the person that I've interviewed, and just kind of get a little bit of background on hey, we're seeing this. Does this make sense to you? Can you help us navigate? And it's been just, the response has been fantastic. People are just like, oh yeah, I'd love to help. And yeah, it'd be great if you guys could, help us out here or there. And, I'll be a champion, I'll be a coach internally, or, whatever. And so that's been just unexpected. We were really thinking of it in terms of, sort of building the community and having it be a little bit of a, just content and a brand, support the brand. But personal connections have been really just phenomenal.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I think one of the things that I had read from you was that the podcast guest able to help guide and sort of support deal cycle engagements, kind of exactly what you're saying. So that's wonderful. And speaking of unexpected, Chip, have there been any other unexpected benefits that you've seen from having a podcast? Obviously, you went into the process with certain expectations, but it is, it can be a different experience, once you're in the thick of it. So any unexpected benefits you've seen from having a podcast?
So I'll go in just a little bit different direction, which is that, but this was also unexpected. We started off as sort of a pure, and you mentioned this a second ago, but we started off as a pure audio podcast, and then we were going to a big, industry event, and it was actually, my boss was like, hey, why don't we do this as Facebook Live? And so we ran some tests and did some things to, just to see how that would work. And, sure enough, and we've been repeating that, where I actually go, in fact, this week we were I was at VM World in Las Vegas, and you have to set some things up ahead of time, but you're on the show floor, and it's great energy for, to kind of have the event as the background. And now it's not only audio, but we actually have the video, the live video from the show floor. And I'll have their company's booth in the background. So there's, the branding for their company, and they talk about the initiatives they're working on, and, and then the same topics about being an alliance professional. So what the value of that then is that we have the Facebook Live video, but then we also turn that into the podcast and put it up there, and the blog and social media. So now you've got this whole mix of content and the blog as well. So people can watch the video or listen to the podcast, the whole thing. So it's really been just fantastic.
That's great. I love to hear that. So Chip, one of the last things that I'm going to ask you and sort of leave our listeners with is, any recommendations that you might have for a company looking to start their own podcast. We've gotten to hear about some of the great benefits. We've gotten to hear a little bit about your journey. Now that you have sort of been through that launch process, and it sounds like you're even fine tuning as you go and finding out new ways that you can use the podcast, which is fantastic. Never stop. Sort of growing with that process. But what recommendations might you have for a company that's looking to start their own podcast?
First of all, I'd say just, do it. I think it's maybe a little bit intimidating, but it's been very rewarding and really helped, build this community of folks around, and not everyone's customers. They're just people that are passionate about the profession. And so, yeah, I would say, jump in and I know this the intention isn't a sales pitch, but I'm very passionate about Sweetfish, and I think you guys do a phenomenal job of really making everything easy. So, essentially I just you do everything on the front end and the back end. So I just sort of show up and have the conversation, and you're doing research on the front end to find folks to participate and getting it set up and doing background information on the person that I'm talking to, and then send them an email when it's ready to go out, and send them a thank you, and do all the posting on all the podcast platforms, and help write the blog. Just the whole thing. There's a lot of work that would otherwise would fall on our team to try and do, and you guys just make it easy. So I think that is probably another message is find someone that can help really make it all, streamline it, and make it work really well. So
well, thank you for those kind words. I mean, that's certainly our intention. What we're trying to do is make it easy so that if anyone out there wants to have a podcast, they can have a podcast. So that's incredible to hear. We've been doing our jobs. We love the success of your show. Again, we have been talking with Chip Rodgers. He's the VP of Marketing at WorkSpan. He is also the host of the Alliance Aces podcast. Definitely check it out. We're going to put that in the show notes. Chip, thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure getting to you.
Johnny, thank you for the time. And yeah, I'd say it again, give it a shot, go try it, go do it.
Yep, get it done.
Okay.
We totally get it. We publish a ton of content on this podcast, and it can be a lot to keep up with. That's why we've started the B2B Growth Big Three, a no-fluff email that boils down our 3 biggest takeaways from an entire week of episodes. Sign up today at sweetfishmedia.com/big3. That's sweetfishmedia.com/big3.